Hi, my name is Priscilla Hatfield. I'm a high school senior and a member of Anti-Trafficking International's Student Advisory Council. Today, I'd like to talk to you about why human trafficking victims return to their traffickers. Human trafficking is a cycle. It begins with some kind of vulnerability. These vulnerabilities, which are essentially risk factors, could range from insecurity and low self-esteem, having family problems, being a runaway or being in foster care, to substance addiction, homelessness, or financial need. For example, traffickers sometimes begin the grooming process by pretending to be romantically invested and assessing which of the victim's needs are not being met. Whether emotional or physical, they start to meet those needs, basically stepping into a savior role. They make false promises and build the victim up, giving them gifts, flattering them, supplying them with drugs, money, or housing, all the while isolating the victim from family and friends through manipulation, saying things like, "Your parents don't understand or love you. Those aren't really your friends, but I'll take care of you." Once they have fully assessed all vulnerabilities and gained the victim's trust, the trafficker flips the situation. They'll say, "I bought you all those gifts and took you out to all those nice dinners," or "I filled your fridge with groceries and gave you a place to stay. Now you owe me, and this is how you'll pay me back." The second stage begins: exploitation. Even if the victim has the opportunity to exit the trafficking situation, the trauma they have experienced, combined with the original unresolved vulnerabilities, perpetuates the likelihood of being exploited over and over again. The cycle of trafficking continues with re-victimization. So, why do victims return to their traffickers? First off, sex trafficking victims are often criminalized. The process of arrest, detainment, and prosecution by law enforcement is highly stressful and humiliating, enforcing negative associations with those who could potentially offer help, and instead strengthening bonds to their trafficker. Law enforcement are often not trained to recognize human trafficking and lack the skills to effectively interact with trauma victims. Another problem is that criminal records close doors of opportunity and make it extremely difficult for victims to start a new life and get any kind of job opportunity, housing, medical care, or education. The National Survivors Network found that 90% of victims had been arrested. Criminal records prevented 81% of respondents from obtaining employment and 55% from getting housing. Returning to their trafficker becomes the only practical option for the victim's needs to be met. Secondly, traffickers use trauma bonding to ingrain feelings of love and loyalty in their victims. This bonding occurs when repeated abuse and trauma is combined with selective displays of love and care. Obedience is rewarded and rebellion is severely punished. This has a biological effect, rewiring the brain and distorting the victim's thinking. The victim feels compelled to return despite the abusive nature of the situation. As mentioned before, traffickers groom victims by making false promises. Likewise, victims who have escaped can be lured back with more manipulation. For example, "Once we get a little more money, we can get out of here. We'll buy a house together. I'll take care of you this time. You just have to do a few more things for me, and I promise I'll never hurt you again." The trafficker plays on the victim's core hopes and dreams for their future in order to exploit them yet again. The victim returns to the abusive situation because they believe the relationship with the trafficker is all they have and that things will eventually get better. Another reason victims return is because they think they cannot survive on their own, financially or otherwise. Often, abusers create a financial situation that makes leaving nearly impossible. Added to that, some trafficked victims are living what would appear to be a very luxurious life. For example, the trafficker supplies them with a high-class living situation, takes them to get their hair and nails done frequently, gives them clothes, cars, and other expensive personal items. The anxiety the victim has about a decline in living standards, either for them or for their children if they have them, keeps them coming back. They may have nowhere else to turn. In addition, a victim's risk of being killed greatly increases when they are in the process of leaving or have just left. 95% of traffickers use coercion and threats of violence to keep victims trapped and/or ensure their return. Threats include that the trafficker will physically harm, kill, or rob the parents, other family members, and close friends of the victim, or that the trafficker will expose pornographic material or otherwise sensitive information in order to ruin the victim's reputation. Survivors often feel shame, isolation, social alienation, and deep feelings of depression. Many victims are dependent on drugs or alcohol while being trafficked, either because the substances were forced on them as a control mechanism by their traffickers, or because substance abuse was a means of coping with immense mistreatment that they suffered. It is often very difficult to reintegrate into society after experiencing so much trauma. It is especially distressing for the victims in situations where they are left without resources such as an education, family, housing, job opportunity, or coping mechanisms for their addiction. This diminishes their self-worth and can make them think that the only way to get their needs met is to return to their trafficker. The sad reality for many victims is that they lack a support system, a link between themselves and their community. Oftentimes, they've been isolated, cut off from friends and family, and they don't know where to go for help. With no resources and no experience with building healthy relationships, they fall right back into the cycle. We can stop the cycle of trafficking by educating and equipping communities to understand, identify, and prevent human trafficking with educational curriculums, prevention programs, and awareness campaigns. We can partner with authorities to secure the freedom of victims and the conviction of traffickers through hotlines, child advocacy centers, identification training, and legal support. Lastly, we can help victims truly become survivors by empowering them to restore their lives. The healing of trauma can mean the difference between re-victimization and independence. Survivors of human trafficking can be empowered to reclaim their lives and independence through trauma-informed holistic aftercare, safe living accommodations, relocation services to help separate from abusers, educational resources, and the building of safe community to support them. I encourage you to get involved in the fight against human trafficking by reaching out to Anti-Trafficking International and learning how you can help. If you are a high school or college student and would like to learn more about the ATI Student Advisory Council, simply go to our website at antitraffickinginternational.org and click on Take Action Now, select Programs, and you will see a tab for the Student Advisory Council and how to apply. Here is also a resource page if you are interested in learning more about this topic. Thank you.